The city hadn't changed. Same cracked sidewalks. Same blinking streetlights. Same people hurrying through the rain, pretending not to notice the shadows that followed them. But to him, everything looked different now. Because he was different. He watched the street from a corner cafe, the collar of his worn leather jacket pulled high. A thin scar ran from his cheek to his jaw, the only visible reminder of the night that should have killed him. The rest of the scars were buried deeper, stitched into his memory. He stirred his coffee, watching the steam rise like smoke. It smelled just like that night. A year ago, his name had been Ethan Cole. He owned a small construction company, a modest home, and a life that made sense. He wasn't rich, but he was happy. He had a wife, Mia, an architect with a laugh that filled their house. They had plans. A future. Then came the fire. It started in his workshop. The police called it an accident, a faulty wire, an unfortunate spark. But Ethan remembered things that didn't fit. The smell of gasoline in the air. The shadow of a car leaving too fast. The laughter of men he used to call partners. And when he woke up in the hospital, wrapped in bandages, Mia was gone. So was everything they'd built. Now he was Noah Gray. A man without a past, using a name no one could trace. He'd spent the last year recovering, training, rebuilding himself. Pain had taught him patience. Loss had taught him precision. He wasn't after revenge in the movies, loud and messy. He wanted something colder, smarter, permanent. He opened his old phone, a cracked screen, no SIM card, just storage. 3 pictures were saved inside. Mia, the night of the fire, and the 3 men he once called brothers. Vince the investor, Troy his foreman, Lennon the lawyer. The police said they were victims too. But Ethan, no Noah, had found the truth in fragments, fake invoices, forged signatures, offshore accounts. They had stolen everything and burned the rest to cover it up. And now they were thriving. Vince owned half the downtown projects. Troy ran a private security company. Lennon had become a rising star in politics. They were untouchable, or at least they thought so. Noah smiled faintly. Let them believe that. His first step was observation. He spent days shadowing Vince, blending into crowds, mapping routines. Vince was still the same, loud, arrogant, addicted to control. He drove a black Maserati, dined at the same rooftop restaurant every Thursday, and kept a mistress who knew nothing about his past. Noah watched from the street below, camera in hand, pretending to be a tourist. Every photo he took was evidence. Every move was a thread in a growing web. But it wasn't enough to destroy him. Not yet. One night, as Noah followed Vince's car out of the city, he noticed something strange. Vince wasn't heading home. He drove past his neighborhood, down the old industrial road, the same direction as the old factory site where the fire had started. Noah's pulse tightened. He followed at a distance, headlights off. Vince stopped near a warehouse, got out, and entered a rusted side door. 2 guards stood outside. Whatever this was, it wasn't business. Noah waited. Watched. Memorized. At 2 a.m., Vince came out again, laughing with someone, a man in a suit, face half hidden. Noah zoomed in with his camera and caught the man's profile. Lennon. The politician. They were still working together. The realization hit like electricity. The fire hadn't been an accident, it had been a deal. A betrayal written in smoke and blood. Noah exhaled slowly, eyes cold. He finally knew where to start. The next morning, he moved to a cheap motel on the edge of the city. Peeling wallpaper, buzzing lights, a broken heater, perfect for disappearing. He set up his laptop, cracked the Wi-Fi password, and started digging. Public records. Property deals. Political donations. Lennon's campaign had received large, anonymous contributions routed through shell companies. One of them was registered under a familiar name, Troy Security Solutions. The same Troy who told Ethan the night before the fire, "Don't stay too late at the site, boss. You've done enough for one day." The irony stung like acid. By evening, Noah had what he needed, proof that the same men who had destroyed his life were now building their empire on ashes. But proof wasn't enough. He wanted them to crumble from the inside. He printed fake IDs, created false profiles, and found his first entry point. Vince's company was hiring a warehouse supervisor. The pay was low, but access was everything. He forged a resume, years of experience in logistics, fake references, a clean background. Within a week he got the job. Just like that, he was back in their world. Different name, same city, same ghosts. The warehouse smelled of oil and lies. Workers moved crates with the quiet rhythm of people who didn't ask questions. Noah learned fast, how to blend in, how to keep his head down while his mind raced ahead. He noticed the pattern. Shipments arriving late at night, unregistered trucks, sealed boxes labeled construction material but weighing far too light. Smuggling. Money laundering. Whatever it was, it reeked of Vince's arrogance. Every night after work, Noah wrote everything down: times, faces, plate numbers. He wasn't just collecting evidence. He was building a trap. But vengeance, he learned, has a heartbeat of its own. One night, while he was locking up the warehouse, a familiar voice cut through the dark. "You close up pretty late for a new guy." Noah froze. Vince stood by the door, hands in his pockets, smile sharp as a blade. "You remind me of someone I used to know," Vince said, stepping closer. "What's your name again?" Noah kept his voice steady. "Gray." "Noah Gray." Vince stared at him, too long. Then smirked. "Welcome to the family, Gray," and walked away. The moment the door shut, Noah's hands trembled. Did Vince recognize him? No, impossible. His face had changed, his voice lower from the damage to his throat after the fire. Still, that look in Vince's eyes felt dangerous. He knew one thing for sure: he couldn't afford a single mistake. Not yet. At dawn, Noah drove out of the city, parked by the ocean, and let the sound of waves drown out his thoughts. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver locket, Mia's. Burned around the edges, the photo inside half melted but still visible. He whispered, "Almost there." He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted balance. And balance always begins with fire. The first week at Vince's warehouse felt like living inside a ticking clock. Every sound, every glance, every misplaced crate could set it off. Noah, the man who once answered to Ethan, moved like a ghost. He spoke little, worked hard, and learned faster than anyone had a right to. The other workers liked him. Vince trusted him enough to give him access to the shipment schedules. Exactly what he needed. But every night, when the lights went out and the workers left, Noah stayed behind, taking photos, scanning documents, piecing together the empire his enemies had built from his ashes. And every morning, he smiled at the same men who'd once left him to burn. He began to see the connections. The warehouse wasn't just storage, it was a hub. Illegal shipments disguised as building materials were distributed to multiple construction sites across the city. Each site linked back to a company owned by either Vince or Lennon. And the man running transport security? Sure. All three of them. Together. Still hiding under the mask of success. Noah realized he wasn't just fighting men. He was fighting a system. One rainy afternoon, Vince called him into his office. A glass box suspended above the warehouse floor. The room smelled of cologne and power. "Gray," Vince said, leaning back in his chair. "You've been doing good work. Efficient. Quiet. I like that." Noah forced a small smile. "I try to be useful." "Useful's underrated these days," Vince said, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. "You know, I used to have a guy like you, loyal, hardworking. But he made mistakes. Big ones. Cost me a fortune." Noah didn't blink. "What happened to him?" Vince smirked. "Let's just say he stopped showing up for work." Their eyes locked. Vince was testing him, looking for cracks, for fear. Noah took the glass, raised it slightly, and said, "Then I'll make sure I never miss a day." Vince laughed, clinked his glass against Noah's, and the moment passed. But Noah knew what it meant. Vince was remembering Ethan Cole. That night, Noah left the warehouse later than usual. Rain fell in sheets, the streetlights glowing like fading stars. He turned a corner, and froze. A man stood by his car. Broad shoulders. Familiar tattoo on his neck. "Troy. Long day?" Troy asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Boss says you're the new guy." Noah nodded slowly. "That's right." "You remind me of someone," Troy said. Had the same look, always thinking, always watching. Noah's pulse quickened. "Is that a bad thing?" Troy smiled without warmth. "Depends who's doing the watching." He walked away, disappearing into the rain. Noah exhaled, realizing he'd been holding his breath the whole time. They were starting to suspect something. And yet, a small part of him liked it. Because fear meant they remembered. The next few days he pushed harder. He installed a hidden camera inside Vince's office, bugged the phone line, and started copying financial records onto encrypted drives. Every piece of data was a weapon. But revenge wasn't just about data. It was about timing. So he waited. And one night his patience paid off. While going through shipment logs, Noah noticed a new delivery, special equipment scheduled for transport to a remote construction site near the docks. Vince's signature. Troy's truck. He decided to follow it. At 1 a.m., Noah drove behind the convoy, headlights off. The trucks moved slowly through the fog, turning off the main road into an abandoned shipyard. He parked at a distance, climbed onto a rusted container and watched. Men unloaded the crates, but they weren't construction materials. They were weapons, military grade. And standing at the center, directing everything, was Lennon, the politician. Clean suit, expensive shoes, hands dirty with crime. Noah recorded everything: faces, serial numbers, transactions. Finally, real proof. But then one of the guards turned and saw him. Hey, up there. Gunfire tore through the air. Noah ducked, sliding down the container, sprinting into the fog. Bullets ripped through metal behind him. He ran until his lungs burned, until the world was just noise and rain. He dove behind a stack of pallets and stayed there, silent, counting every second. When the shouting stopped, he crept back toward his car, but it was gone. They'd found it. His only way out now was on foot. He walked for hours through the empty docks, soaked and shaking, until he reached a small diner that stayed open all night. Inside, the lights buzzed weakly. The waitress didn't even look up. Noah slid into a booth, pulled out his phone and reviewed the footage. Grainy but clear enough to ruin lives. He smiled for the first time in days. Then he noticed the waitress glancing at him, too often. Her reflection in the window. Her hand moving to her pocket. Phone. She was calling someone. Noah stood up slowly, left a few dollars on the table and walked out the back door. As soon as he stepped into the alley, headlights flashed behind him. A black SUV rolled forward, engine growling. Troy stepped out. You should have stayed dead, Ethan. Noah froze. So they did know. The fight was brutal. Troy swung first, a heavy punch that sent Noah crashing into a wall. But Noah had spent a year training waiting for this. He dodged the next hit, grabbed a piece of pipe from the ground and struck back. The sound of metal against bone echoed through the rain. They grappled, slipping in the mud, blood mixing with water. Troy reached for a knife, but Noah kicked it away, slammed him against the dumpster and held the pipe to his throat. Who planned it? Noah hissed. Who killed her? Troy's eyes flickered, fear, guilt, then rage. You were supposed to die too. Noah's grip tightened. Names? Vince and Lennon. Wait. Before he could finish, a gunshot cracked through the air. Troy's body went limp. Noah turned. A man stood at the end of the alley, gun in hand. Vince. You never learn, do you? Vince said, stepping closer. You should have stayed buried. Noah dropped behind the dumpster as another shot whizzed past. He crawled through a side gate, sprinted down the street and vanished into the night. Behind him, Troy's body lay motionless, another ghost in the rain. By dawn, Noah reached the edge of the river. He dropped the bloodied pipe into the water, hands trembling. Troy was dead. One of them was gone. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the beginning of something darker. He replayed the moment in his head, the flash, the scream, the silence. Every sound burned itself into memory. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was war. Noah spent the next 2 days hiding in an abandoned apartment above a pawn shop. He cleaned his wounds, replaced his fake IDs and erased his trail. He couldn't go back to the warehouse. Vince would have burned it all by now. Instead, he started leaking the footage from the docks to small, anonymous accounts online. Journalists, watchdogs, activists. The video spread fast. Within 48 hours, the headlines hit. Senator Lennon linked to illegal weapons shipments. Lennon denied everything. Vince disappeared from public view. But Noah knew it wasn't over. Not yet. That night he opened his wallet. Inside was the same silver locket. Mia's? He whispered. One left. Vince. The man who laughed while everything burned. And as the city's skyline flickered in the distance, Noah loaded a single round into a revolver and said softly, this time it's personal. Noah had waited a year for this moment. Every file, every recording, every sleepless night, all leading to the man who laughed while his wife burned. Vince thought he was untouchable, surrounded by guards and lawyers. But power has blind spots, habits that become traps. Noah found his. He didn't come with guns this time. He came with proof. He broke into Vince's office at night, leaving behind a trail of evidence. Hidden recordings, forged invoices, offshore transactions, all scheduled to leak at sunrise. By morning, the news exploded. Federal investigation launched into Voss Industries. TV screens showed Vince's face, the man who used to smile for cameras now pale, silent, cornered. Noah watched from a cheap motel, coffee shaking in his hand. He thought it would feel like victory. Instead, it felt like silence. When the agents took Vince away in handcuffs, the cameras caught every second. For the world it was justice. For Noah it was just over. That night he walked to the same river where it all began. He pulled the revolver from his jacket, the one he carried since the fire, and stared at it. Then without a word he dropped it into the dark water. It sank without a splash. He didn't smile. Didn't cry. He just stood there, breathing, free for the first time in years. "You can't bring the dead back," he whispered. "But you can make the living remember." And as the city lights flickered across the river, Noah turned away. Not as a hero, not as a monster, but as a man who finally stopped running from the fire.